Hey everybody, happy Friday. I don't know about you, but I am so excited that it's Friday and I'm really excited to be here with all of you. So today we're going to be talking about reframing bad outcomes to good intentions. And so what exactly does that mean? Well, if you're a human being, chances are that you have been negatively impacted by somebody else's actions. But how true is it that most people are really just doing the best that they possibly can at any given moment? And most people aren't walking around trying to be assholes. You know, a lot of people, they do have really good intentions, but unfortunately, somewhere between the good intention and the action, there's a bit of miscommunication that goes on within somebody's mind or, you know, from our brain to our hands or whatever the case may be. And things don't always turn out the way that we intend. And therefore, there can be that bad outcome. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example about this. So last month in September, me and my family decided to take a road trip to Banff. And on the second day, I want to say, second or third day that we were there, my son was just not going down for a nap. And he gets super cranky if he misses his nap. And this was the second day in a row now that we were really struggling to get him down because we were, of course, in a new environment and whatnot. And so we decided after going for a walk and whatnot, and it was after lunchtime and he was getting really tired, we thought, you know what, we're going to go for a bit of a drive. And of course, that's just a foolproof way for him to go to sleep majority of the time. So my husband was really hungry and he's like, you know, stop at this place. I'm like, no, like, let's just go. It looks like there's a place down there. Anyways, I ended up driving for about 40 kilometers because the place that it said that was available was a lot further out than I had initially anticipated. So I'm driving and my son is happily sleeping, snoring in the back seat. So it's like, yes, score. So we finally get to this little cafe. It wasn't really a cafe. I guess it was like a fancy convenience store because they had, you know, different meals in there and they had some grocery items. It was a little bit more than a convenience store. And I'm sitting out in the Jeep and my son is snoring in the back seat and I'm listening to music or whatnot. My husband goes inside and being the good husband that he is majority of the time, he calls me to find out what it is that I want from the store. But my Bluetooth was hooked up, and so the phone starts ringing through the speakers, and Jalen's just like, oh, and he's awake. So he got about a 20-minute nap, which I guess is better than nothing, but he woke up, and so I kind of yelled at my husband a little bit, like, what are you doing? The Bluetooth, ah! But the fact of the matter is that the intention behind his action was that he was trying to please me. You know, he knows how picky I am. He wanted to make sure that he was making me happy. So he called me from the inside of the store to find out what it is that I wanted, not realizing that my phone was hooked up to the Bluetooth, which then woke up our son. So that's just one example of how a good intention can lead to a bad outcome. Now, in that scenario, I could have just looked at the bad outcome and, you know, and my thought could have led to my thought of, what are you doing? Like, you idiot, why would you call me right now when you know that he's sleeping in the back seat? Could have led to my feeling of frustration and anger, which could have led to my action of getting in a fight with my husband. And of course, that wouldn't have been a good outcome either. But when you really try to look beyond the obvious circumstances and kind of root a little bit deeper into what's going on, you'll realize that like 98% of the time, there's a good intention behind the crappy outcome that happened. And most of the time, you know, because we react so quickly, we don't take the time to really think about what that might have been, because again, our thought leads to our emotion, which leads to our action. And usually that thought is not, this deep-seated thought about, okay, well, I bet you they meant well, right? So a lot of times the thought comes out like, what are they doing? Or how could they do that? Or whatever the case may be. So it's really important to dig a little deeper, and anytime that you're affected by someone's bad outcome, just kind of reframe it a little bit. And what do I mean by reframing? Reframing basically means looking at the situation from a different point of view. Okay, so maybe stepping into that person's shoes and where they might have been acting from or talking from or whatever the case may be. And that leads into discussing about interpretations. And this is one of the blocks that really affects us as human beings. Interpretations are those stories that we tell ourselves about why something is the way that it is. So the example I always like to use when I'm explaining interpretations is, let's say that I'm meeting somebody for a coffee meeting, a business meeting or whatnot, and I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and I'm looking at the clock, and 5-10 minutes passes and they still haven't shown up. In my mind, the story that I'm telling myself might be something like, wow, that person really doesn't respect my time. When really, maybe they got caught up in traffic, or maybe they had a family emergency, or a million other possibilities as to the truth of what actually happened. But here I am busy telling myself stories, okay? So that's the same thing when we're talking about reframing bad outcomes to good intentions. A lot of times people have really good intentions. Again, it's just that miscommunication between the intention and the action that leads to the unfavorable outcome. So it's this is just a little trick that you can use, just anytime that you're finding yourself kind of jumping to conclusions or thinking about, that story, that interpretation in your mind about why something turned out the way that it did. Instead of having the initial thought about, okay, so-and-so is an idiot, or they don't respect my time, or whatever the case may be, just take a step back, catch yourself having those thoughts, and then try to look at it from a different perspective. Okay, so what are the other possibilities that came about here, because a lot of times, again, people do have really good intentions. People truly do try to do the best that they can in any given situation. Now, not 100% of the time, of course. Like, I'm not trying to put everybody into a stereotypical bubble here, but most of the time, people are trying to do the best that they can. So we have to, as a human race, just have a little bit more kindness and compassion, and instead of just jumping to those conclusions and telling ourselves those stories, really get to the root cause of why something is the way that it is. So the other example that I gave in my social media post this week in terms of the bad outcomes to good intentions, or reframing the bad outcomes to good intentions, was my son, who a week or so ago, he always sees me feeding the plants with water. And I have a lot of plants in my house. It's kind of one of those things that I don't know, makes me feel good, I guess, to have that in my environment. And so he was drinking a glass of milk, and he thought, the tree is thirsty. Let me go give him a drink. So he walked over to Frank the ficus, which is in my front living room, and he poured the rest of his milk in the soil. And so me looking at that as an observer is kind of like, what are you doing? Like, the plant doesn't drink milk. But the intention behind his action was really sweet. He was just trying to help. He was trying to give the tree something to drink. Obviously, he's like 3 years old. He doesn't really understand that trees don't drink milk and they only drink water. But again, right, I could have looked at that situation and said, like, what are you doing? And just got really angry and upset about it. Or I can take that step back. I can reframe the bad outcome and look at the good intention. And when I look at the good intention, it just makes my heart melt. So anyways, that's all I have for you folks today. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's Friday at 5. I'm actually drinking water today because water is really important. and I don't drink nearly enough of it. This is actually the water bottle that I fill up on a daily basis. It's a 1 liter bottle. So my goal for every day is to at least drink a minimum of 1 liter of water. And so I carry this around with me to make sure that I reach my goal. As you can see, I'm about halfway to my goal today. So I really needed to drink some water. So I figured, you know what, today that's what my drink is going to be. So take care of yourself for now. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll be back next Wednesday for the Balancing Act business chat. And if you are subscribed to my email list, you will get the information about that first and foremost of what is going on. I send out an email to my list every Monday with some business tips and tricks, some promo codes of things that I'm going to be offering in the future. As we're getting closer to the end of 2020, you're really going to want to be subscribed to that email list, because I'll be having more offerings coming about of private or group coaching workshops and whatnot. So if you aren't subscribed, you can just drop your email in the comments, or you can PM them to me, and I'll add you to the list, and then you'll get that on Monday. So in the meantime, I will see you next Wednesday. Ciao for now.